Dave, we've got time for one.
Oh, we do?
Quick,
We have
just
time
one
for one
quick.
question.
I wanted to ask you, what mistakes do you think companies make most? Playing it safe or chasing a pie-in-the-sky idea?
Almost none of these companies are chasing big ideas. Most of them are focusing all of their time and attention on protecting what they already have. And it's important to protect what you have, but we should be very honest with ourselves. There's not enough there to live into the future. We've got to figure out what our product experience looks like in the future. I spoke to a very large consumer packaged goods manufacturer, and they said to me, well, you know, we sell toothbrushes, we sell feminine hygiene products, we're never going to be digital. And I said, go look at the App Store and see how many app trackers there are, apps that track feminine hygiene needs or oral hygiene or other things. This person went to the Apple App Store, searched for all the keywords that they use when they do search engine optimization, and found that there were dozens of apps that were already building a customer relationship into their customer experience.
Around toothbrushes.
Around toothbrushes, around feminine hygiene, around any kind of personal issue. If it matters, someone's building an app to make it better. And if you make those products and you're not participating in those apps, you're out of the game.
All right.
Excellent.
Clear words. Thank you very much, James.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you.
All right. Okay, we've got another question for the audience. How many of you expect your next smartphone to be easier to use than your current one? We want to see a show of hands. Okay, so about half. All right, now how many of you believe that your next smartphone will be easier to use than your current one? Okay, well, all right, so half and half. You are not alone. In fact, studies are showing users are demanding more simplicity in technical products, and this has become the #1 criterion guiding their purchasing decisions. Make it easy for me, and I will buy it. That is the motto. Well, will this trend continue, and how should manufacturers prioritize their R&D programs? Well, we've assembled a panel of 4 professionals today, people who are in the know about keeping it simple and keeping customers happy. So please give a round of applause for our 4 panelists. They're going to come out on the stage now. Hey, hey, hi. Good to see you. Take a seat.
Thank you.
Good to see you, gentlemen. Hey, Tjeerd. Hey.
Hi.
Hey. All right. Keeping it simple, the death of complexity. We want to keep it simple here, too, for the next 45 minutes, and it's going to help everybody if we know exactly what you guys do. So, Jane, let's start with you. Just, you're the CEO with Microsoft Germany. Tell us a little bit about what you do at Microsoft.
So at Microsoft, I'm responsible for all of our product marketing and management of the products, as well as marketing communications, our customer satisfaction, which is actually one of the primary things that we measure on an annual basis, as well as how effectively we compete in the marketplace.
Okay, and next to you we've got Tim Stone. He's the Vice President for Marketing, Europe, Middle East, Africa at Polycom. Tim, what's Polycom?
Well, I think probably most people in the audience use our products, even if you don't know Polycom so well. We're best known for the triangular phones that are in most conference rooms around the world. And we're also the market leader in open standards-based video conferencing. So I'm sure many of you, maybe without knowing, using Polycom video conferencing systems. So I'm responsible for marketing those for Europe, Middle East, Africa. Okay, and next to you we've got Mr. and if I butcher your name, tell me, Tjeerd Hoek.
That's pretty good.
Is that pretty good?
Tjeerd,
All right.
Yeah.
Tjeerd, Vice President of Creative at Frog.
That's right. Frog works on innovation with clients such as these, so large companies that build products for people out in the world, physical, but primarily also a lot of digital experiences. And we work with these clients to deal with change and think of new capabilities and exciting new services and making those better and ultimately, hopefully simpler and easier to use.
All right, and next to you, last but not least, Mr. Gary Davey, Executive Vice President of Programming at Sky. What is Sky?
Well, it means a lot of different things in a lot of different places, but in Germany we are a pay TV platform delivered via satellite, cable, and now the internet. We have 3.3 million paying subs. and we deliver linear and on-demand programming content across all of the programming categories in linear form and on demand on iPads, iPhones, and in big set-top boxes inside the home.
We invited all of you here today because we want to talk about the next best thing, that being the death of complexity. We heard from a couple of panelists yesterday. They mentioned it in the panelist earlier today in the panel. We had someone actually use the words, the death of complexity. What I want to start out asking all of you, what does that actually mean right now? Gary, what does it mean for you?
Well, I'm probably the oldest resident of the global digital village, so...
No, you're not. We had someone in the last panel say he was a dinosaur.
Well, I hope I'm not one of those.
No,
but,
not yet.
So I've been involved in this evolution for a very long time. In fact, it's funny because I found an old box of papers the other day and reminded myself that I attended my first convergence conference 31 years ago.
Wow.
So this is not a new subject.
What were you converging 31 years ago?
Well, they were talking about the convergence of digital, TV meets data was the concept. We've spent our whole lives trying to simplify the user interface. And in fact, companies like Frog help us with a lot of the design work in our apps in particular. But we're working in a lot of different places in television now. And to get a unified customer relationship across multiple devices in multiple locations, using all kinds of different delivery vehicles is really quite complex. We launched a new product just the other day, which is a mobile electronic program guide where you can book recordings of your favorite shows from your iPhone or an iPad. And when I saw it, I sent the engineers a note saying anything that simple to use had to be really tough to make. And that's what we do, all of us, in the process of improving the customer experience. Because at the end of the day, our business model, we're a customer service company. Mm-hmm. And that customer relationship is so precious. Everything we do is designed to enhance it.
Is that true? And Tjeerd, maybe you can pick up on that. Is it difficult to make things simple?
Definitely, and I actually think there's a risk of trivializing this problem, right? And when I first saw the death of complexity as a subject, I was like, well, I'm not sure that complexity should die, right? There is good complexity, and there are really terribly designed, badly designed products that don't work for people at all, right? But we work on a lot of products ranging from consumer products to very vertical professional tools, and those are often extremely powerful pieces of software or hardware. And you need to really understand what the user ultimately is doing, go out and find more out about that, and set up a process to gain insights about that on a continuous basis, and let that drive your innovation thinking and your design and implementation of that product. But it's not a matter of just cutting some buttons out or removing some features. And the worst thing I always say is when the CEO of a company says something like, well, I'm kind of like Steve Jobs myself. Don't do that, right? Solving the complexity problem is in itself not a trivial thing.
Okay. What do you guys think about that? I mean, are we really in the era of the death of complexity?
Well, I believe so, and I can just look at my product lines as an example of what we've tried to do to create consistent UI across the... You're being attacked. Consistent UI across devices, whether it be from phone to tablet to PC to the television, and so across all different lines so that you can have a consistent UI. So it's easier and simpler for people to be able to navigate through one device to another. So I mean, I fundamentally believe we're on path. But there's a lot more that we need to do. And when you look at what's happening in the marketplace about different types of even payment offerings, it's becoming more complex, but it's becoming more flexible at the same time. So you can choose if you want to pay per use, or if you want to have annual billing, or what have you. So there's some really interesting things that are happening right now in the market.
There are a lot of even PC users who decided that they wanted to go to Apple products. They didn't want to deal with anything with Microsoft because they said Apple was much more intuitive.
Yeah.
Do you guys still live with the reputation of not necessarily being the most intuitive for users?
Well, I think what's interesting with Windows 8, and I don't know if you've actually touched Windows 8 yet. If not...
Well, Kevin Turner told us 2 days ago that the future is all touch.
Yes, and you can come by the booth and I will actually show you many of our touch devices. But when you think about Windows 8 and what we've been able to do in terms of creating touch and using the tiles to simplify the app economy that we're living in, I absolutely believe that we have become much simpler. And if you believe the reviews that are in the marketplace, they actually agree with that.
Okay, all right, we'll touch on that in just a second. Tim, what about for you guys? Video conferencing. It seems like in itself it would be something very simple, but it's not, is it?
Yeah, well, I guess video conferencing's been around for maybe 15 years or so, and one of the big barriers to adoption, I think, historically has been the ease of use, or not, as the case may be. I mean, I'm sure many of you guys in the audience would have been in situations where you've gone into a meeting room, you couldn't get the system working, you're confronted with a 28-button remote control, you have to ring IT, they come along, they work out what the IP address is. I mean, this is the kind of history of video conferencing, which has really held back the adoption in the market. And if you can't get utilization rates up in your rooms, you're never going to get an ROI. So, in the best cases, we know we're looking at some customers using the rooms 60, 70% of a working day, purely because there's been a lot of work done around the UI, the user interface. So, for example, we spent 2 years user testing with a brand new set of user interfaces for the products that we have, which is consistent, as we were just saying, about across mobile devices, room systems, executive desktop systems, all with a common look and feel. So if I'm working at home on a desktop system, same UI in a room system, and also on my laptop or my iPad if I'm in a hotel room. So that's the history of it, and there's been huge efforts to simplify setting up these meetings.
You say if you're working at home, that makes me think of Yahoo, and the CEO of Yahoo saying that she wants everyone in the office now, no more home office. Let me get everyone's take on that first of all. Is that a simpler future, making everyone come into the office? Well, I mean, obviously that's going to reduce the need for video conferencing, isn't it?
Well, I've got a really strong view on this. Having worked in North American-based companies with flexible working for 13 years, I mean, I can categorically say I would never go back to a role that was desk-based, 9 to 5, in one particular place of work. So, and I think, I'm sure there's different opinions on this, but if you're going to restrict the pool of talent you've got, you need to collaborate with people across cultures in different countries. There's been a lot of research which shows that multicultural teams outperform single culture teams. So the whole notion of all being in one place doesn't make sense. You need collaboration tools, sharing of documents, rich media, video, to be able to work cross culture, cross country on projects. So the whole notion of coming into one office, I think would be a major backward step and reduce people's work-life balance as well.
Ted, do you agree with that?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think all the trends that we see are actually much more about how things are merging, right? People aren't doing these things so compartmentalized anymore. Work life and home life is really kind of blended. Cultures are blended. You're working, everything you're doing is for a global economy. So the trend you just quoted from the Yahoo, was it CEO?
Yeah, the CEO, yeah.
That would seem like a strange simplification.
Well, I mean, it is interesting, talking about simplifying the working world. I think that the thinking at Yahoo is that people are distracted a lot more when they're home. And when they're in the office, they're forced to concentrate. So it's the message that we're getting from her is that you are more concentrated, which means you're actually performing better and more in a smaller amount of time. And that seems simpler, doesn't it? And you're smirking at me here.
Yeah, I actually think it's kind of an interesting concept. If you look at what people and the younger generation are looking for, they're looking for flexibility. I was at a CEO conference last week and had the opportunity to listen to a presenter talk about at the Ace Hotel in Midtown in New York City. Really cool, funky hotel. And they have a great lobby area. It's packed, but not with people that are actually staying in the hotel. It's packed with people that actually work out of a home office, but their home office choice is not in their home, but someplace else from a social perspective to be around people. So I think from a social side, there's value in terms of interactions and relationships. What I would question is how many meetings are created that people are attending that may interrupt that productivity wish that she's thinking about.
Okay. Let me pull in Gary on this. I mean, you talked about the customer. Talk a little bit about the work environment at Sky. What's your take on home office versus office?
I think it varies almost department to department. I mean, I think there's a lot of specialist areas where we need to pull in highly specialized skill sets that are often best pulled in over the internet in some form. But again, there's also a lot of collaboration that really only works face-to-face. So I think it varies from department to department.
Yeah. Let's just ask the audience, too. Someone asked me backstage to maybe take a little straw poll here. How many people here in the audience work from home, are able to work from home? Give us a show of hands. Wow. Yeah. That's a lot. Yeah. Now, how many people would want to work, let's say, at Yahoo if you knew that you had to go to the office every day? Oh my God, what, yes. 1, 2?
3.
Okay, so there's your answer. Yeah, so killing complexity, I think for a lot of people means having this flexibility. Tjeerd, let me ask you, your position at Frog. I mean, you've got one of these great jobs where you actually study lots of things and you ask yourself, what is not intuitive about these things? What can be done to make these things simpler? Give us an example of what you've been working on lately.
Well, it's interesting because one thing you were just mentioning earlier was touch, right? And this element of humanizing technology. And I think that one thing that really is recurring in all the work that we're doing is that technology is kind of leaving all these little boxes that they've been in, and it's more, going out into the world. You got a lot of different kind of products that are all talking to each other, that are all connected, actual continued convergence. And so that actually makes it more of a challenge often for companies also to realize that they're in an ecosystem of products and services rather than that it's about this one isolated thing, right? And the other thing I was thinking about in terms of flexibility, a lot of these tools that we're designing, some of them may be about just offering a little bit of information in the context of daily activities, right? And you kind of have to find a balance between distracting somebody from what they're trying to do with information versus letting them do what they're doing. Or if they're, say, in a video conference, letting them really focus on the conversation they're having with people rather than be busy with the UI, right? That's a major challenge. And then there's, on the other side of the spectrum, we may be designing like a stockbroker piece of software, and these guys are sitting between 6 big giant screens sort of really built in, and they've totally customized this, and they're seeing all this data being visualized on a continuous basis, and they set up a ton of rules around what they find important, and they need to really have their entire brain, really taken up by that interface. And so there's a huge diversity in the kind of challenges and a different kind of level of interruption and complexity and heaviness of the interface you can bring to the table.
Are there companies that you could name where you would say they are really on the ball in producing products and processes that are just incredibly intuitive?
Yeah. Well, the standard example is always, of course, that Apple products succeed very well at this. And I do think that Apple has brought some innovations to the table that are just utterly trivial as a model. So, the way, if you look at how kids are using iPhones and iPads and how simple that is, that's cool. At the same time, that model takes you in a certain direction, right? It's kind of a classical, like, app launcher mechanism, whereas the direction that Microsoft's taking, for example, with their OS right now, is to try to build in a little bit more information and flexibility into these front ends of the UI. So they're trying to take that dial of simplicity and put it in a slightly different kind of place. And there's just trade-offs there to make, but I don't think there's anyone that really, always nails it. Apple is actually really great at making sure that the moments where they did not nail it somehow disappear from history.
Oh, yeah, it's a good point. Gary, I have to ask you, you work in television. A lot of people say that the days of television are numbered, that the dividing lines between television, between the internet, are going to make television as we know it, programming as we know it, one day become true dinosaurs. And that's actually a good future for us because it'll make things simpler for the user. What do you say about that? I'm not asking you to write your own epitaph.
No,
here,
it's okay. Listen, I've been defending television for 40 years now, and I'm sure I'll be doing it for a few years still to come. Look, we keep talking about the death of television, but I have to tell you, I think we're at the dawn of a golden age in television. I mean, today, television is the new cinema. It has reached a level of quality that has never been reached in its history. Just at a time when everybody's writing it off as being dead.
You mean in the quality of programming, or?
Yes, or what else is it?
Or the quantity of programming?
Well, the quantity's going up with the quality extraordinarily. I mean, it's only a few years ago that, the creative momentum of the world emanated from 3 national networks in America.
Right.
And now if you look at the 3 hottest shows in America, well, 3 of the 5 hottest shows in America today are on a network called AMC, which stands for American Movie Classics. Mm-hmm. Most people never heard of it, right? So Walking Dead, Mad Men, and Breaking Bad, which I think are 3 of the most innovative TV shows in the world, are on a little cable network called AMC. And I find that so exciting. And then if you look at what HBO's doing with Boardwalk Empire and Game of Thrones, we're working now on our launch of Game of Thrones Season 3. It will be the biggest stunt that I've ever done in my career. And it's so exciting because what we'll do is we'll have it on Sky Go within 90 minutes of the US premiere, and we'll combine it with the 20 preceding episodes. So the whole history of that TV show will be there available on that night, and will stay there for the rest of the season. That's something we've never been able to do before, and it's a lot of work in technology, presentation, design, rights management, negotiation, acquisition. It's a very complex world that we're in, but you know what? The subscriber doesn't give a damn about all that. They're just interested in the experience, and if you can give them the whole story on one night and explain it to them. So this will all come with a guide that walks them through episode 1 all the way through to episode 21 in a really friendly, smooth, intuitive way. How the hell can you be talking about the death of television?
Yeah.
Well,
I totally,
maybe you're not.
Add a little bit to that?
Yeah.
I totally agree. And in a way, we're actually sort of in between ages right now because there's so much still that we're trying to get out of these old models of thinking, right? Like, as I say, like the way that the old broadcasters thought that they owned your entire evening and they were sort of determining your programming.
Yes.
Days are over, right? Everything's sort of like now flexible and thrown up into bits, and there's multiple devices, and any time of the day you can pick stuff up that you're interested in and find the content that you care about and mix movies and pictures and music.
Yeah, but what you're describing is the users are actually going to be taking Gary's job. I mean, I am becoming my own program director.
Happy for that to happen.
Yeah.
Very happy for that to happen. Look, here's an example of what we're just saying here. In Germany, there are 142 free-to-air television channels, and every one of them puts their best show on every night at 8:15.
That's right.
Try to explain that to a 21-year-old. And, try to make sense of that in this new world that you're just describing here. It's absolutely crazy. Mm-hmm. people demand the right to program their own lives, and they deserve that
But
right.
you know, I agree with you on that, Gary. But let's take Germany as an example, because I'm still, I've lived here for quite a while, and I'm still amazed by this. One of the most watched television programs, even in this age of YouTube and digital everything, is the Tagesschau at 8 p.m. every night. And that means people of all ages, I mean, the demographics, of course, tend to skew older, but people are still stopping and watching at 8 p.m.
Yes, but the average age of that show is 64 years. That's
Right.
the average age.
So those dinosaurs
Average age.
eventually will become extinct, but then what's going to happen to the programming? I mean, I don't want to stick too much on Germany, but do you see a time when the whole paradigm of primetime programming will end because everyone is a program director at home?
I don't think that will ever come. And I mean, if that was going to happen, it would have already happened in the US. I mean, if you look at the US, those business models still work. They're declining. The age profile of all of the traditional networks is getting older and older. I remember when we launched the Fox network, we launched it because of the age profile, and that was, what, 23 years ago?
A long time ago, yeah.
I mean, it feels like it's a new network, but it's 23 years. And we did it because of the age profile of the older networks, but they're still there. And if you look, we talked about it earlier, the primetime news.
Yeah.
The early evening news on network television is full of Geritol ads but that's okay. There's still an audience there. It hasn't gone away.
Well, it's the same way here in Germany, too, if you watch the commercial stations, what they're airing in their commercials. We were talking about this in the States, that when I go back to the States and look at the evening news, the commercials are for, Cialis every day, Lipitor because my cholesterol is too high, laxatives, I'm irregular all the time. I mean, you would think that the people watching television at 6:30 p.m. are just one step away from being in the grave, right? But they're still trying to enjoy life with Cialis, You wanted to say something, yeah.
But I think when you talk about everyone being their own program manager, I think we're missing something that's happening behind the scenes, because to make things simple, there's a lot of work that happens. And so when you think of all the data that's being collected today and the trend of big data and simplifying that, and so you don't have to think about it. You actually have the information and the recommendations coming to you. So I think in terms of making things easier, killing complexity, that is actually the future and where we are today. If you look at Amazon in terms of recommendations, in terms of purchasing, we're already there. Now expand that to areas of music, which is done, to TV, to video, what have you. And I think that's a really exciting place to be. And again, killing complexity by taking it all to the back end.
Okay.
You can kind of see it already in how music has evolved as well, right? Like where you at some point had, programs like iTunes or Windows Media Player, and you're like managing all your thousands of music files to choose individual songs to go on a device. It's kind of a crazy concept and it breaks down, right? iTunes broke down under its own weight in terms of its complexity and what it was trying to all bring together. And now we're much more looking at service-based models, no ownership of these files, and no management, more like a radio-like model for just listening to music that you care about based on metadata and personal choices.
I got a question for Tim, but any questions from the audience before we move on? We've got a couple of people with microphones. If you do, raise your hand. We've got a gentleman here in the front.
A question about just complexity in general. At the keynote opening, Thomas Enders talked to the head of EADS, talked about how complicated it is for plane manufacturers to deal with IT, 500 kilometers of cable in an A380, and basically said to the IT industry, you're way ahead of us. We can't keep up. It takes us 7 years to build an airplane. You got to do something that we're going to be able to keep up with this, or we're just going to go, things are going to start crashing. Now, look at your home now. I look at my home, and I've got I've got an iPhone, I've got an iPad, I've got Windows that I just upgraded to on my PC, which I upgraded to Windows 8. My wife decided to stay with number 7 because she couldn't see why she needed to have it. It doesn't have a touch screen anyway. She decided to go with Samsung, so she's got a Galaxy iPhone and an Android tablet. Then we walk into the living room. It starts to get really interesting. We've got a smart TV. We've got a computer connected to the TV. We've got a Blu-ray disc player. So that's just one thing. And every day on the iPhone, bing, 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 another 25 apps are crying out to be updated. And you have to learn how to deal with it and deal with LinkedIn and Zing and Facebook and blah, 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 on and on. Isn't it? And then you step into your car, and BMW has just made something to make it even more simpler to drive with all kinds of buttons and things that you have to figure out. I mean, isn't it just getting to be a little bit, I mean, if Enders is saying to the IT industry, stop, because we can't build the planes anymore, what are the poor consumers going to be doing about it?
Good question, good question. Yeah, I mean, things are actually getting more complex, aren't they, from what you're experiencing?
Well, I mean, this is why I probably have a job for quite a while. So there's a couple of really important points there. One thing is that if you're in a business of making those kind of products, right, whether it's in the entertainment space or software tools, services, phones, all these, or cars, right? You gotta not just think about your own product. You have to think about what people really are in the rest of their environment, and think how you play within that. And that seems like a trivial thing, but a lot of companies just think away from, their own perspective, put their own lens on it, and forget that, oh yeah, maybe people actually have some other audio equipment around my television set, right? And how do they deal with all those wires there? So take that bigger perspective is one super important point. And the other one is, don't just think away from engineering and sales, but go really meet your customers and see what they're doing in the real world, and understand what they're doing with your products. Again, seems like an obvious thing, but we talk to many companies that ultimately primarily have some marketing data or some feedback from quantitative research that they've done with their customers. And that is important, but there's a lot of other kind of data that you can use to make better decisions ultimately.
Tim?
Yeah, and I've got a perspective on that because I think ecosystem is absolutely spot on, and bringing it back to the maybe not as exciting area as TV programming, around the video space in terms of video conferencing and collaboration. One of the second major challenges, apart from this sort of user interface complexity I spoke about, is how do you have a global sort of video directory, for want of a better word? Now, you've got a telephone directory globally, you can ring anybody. You've got an email directory, so you can... But in terms of video, that hasn't really happened. And one of the things that we've been trying to do at Polycom is try to join up these disparate video islands around the world. You've got a lot of enterprise video, you've got FaceTime, you've got Skype, and many other applications out there. So one of the things that we've done is create some software called Cloud Access, which enables you to drag and drop people from all of these different directories, Facebook, Google Talk, Skype, into a secure video conference, which is running through a browser on the far end, and bring people together into a unified session. So, directory integration is a really important thing to federate across these different video applications that are out there that we've been working on. And, coming back to what I was saying earlier, consistency across any device is critical. So, when you go to your Android device, or your I've got an Android phone, and I've got an iPad, and I've got a Windows PC. So I can move between those three with an identical user interface. So I think directories and ecosystem is really, really important to try and unify all these islands of video to make it much easier for people to connect.
What you want to create is you want to take telephony, and you want to give us video. And you want the experience to be the same as it is for a telephone.
Absolutely, and I mean one of the most the best examples I've seen since I've been at Polycom is there's a healthcare provider in Sweden, and this is an amazing story, and it does play into the television as well, where it's a very Arctic conditions out there in this particular hospital district, very difficult transport links, especially in winter. And they're actually giving patients the ability to download an iPad app, which is a Polycom application, to their PC, onto an iPad or a Mac device. They take that home and they're providing physiotherapy care, long-term chronic illness care like diabetes, antenatal, postnatal care, I think I said physiotherapy. So all of these different services as an outpatient with a free-to-download application for patients, meaning that they don't have to drive 1, 2, 3 hours for a hospital appointment with a doctor. They can monitor them while they're at home. I mean, some of this technology is absolutely, transforming people's lives, and because it's simple to use.
I think on the software end, there's a lot of really interesting work going on, but I'm very sympathetic to the airline industry hardware design issues. We suffer the same challenges on a much smaller scale when we're designing a set-top box that is theoretically going to still be sitting there on top of somebody's bench under the TV in 5-10 years from now. I mean, I remember sitting around rooms and telling engineers this thing has to be future-proof. Remember that word, future-proof? Yeah. That's a bit silly, that idea. But you can make things like, well, we decided, for example, very smart decision to separate the hard drive from our set-top box. So, and we thought we had this huge hard drive, 320 gigabyte hard drive. Well, next month we're issuing a new one, it's 2 terabytes. Because that's what the consumer wants. They want the right to record tons of programming. And so that hard drive is going to get bigger and bigger and bigger, and we'll just replace it in the post. We literally send the hard drive in the post, throw the old one away, and you've got a 2 terabyte system. So, yeah, the hardware challenges are immense in trying to figure out what is the hardware going to need to sustain 5 years from now. Quite frankly, we're not sure.
But I think this is when new business opportunities come up in terms of new companies. You look at what Frog is doing, I mean, in terms of innovating and showing how you can do things. And when you look at the cloud and the opportunities that are coming there, you have totally new industries that are being created because of the complexity to try to simplify it. So I think there's a lot of opportunity. There's a lot of growing pains along the way to absolutely understand what you're experiencing. All of us are experiencing that. But I find it quite fascinating is that where there's challenges, that is opportunity for new businesses to come in and create that ecosystem to be able to solve those problems and make it easier, whether it's cloud, someone that shows up at your house and takes care of everything for you, to the way businesses are managing all the new technologies and people bringing consumer devices into their workplace that they've never had that experience before. And so it's actually a really great opportunity is the way I look at it in terms of how do we affect that change and make it better for everybody.
In a lot of ways, it's actually an imperative now, right? Because your customers are demanding and expecting a higher level of quality. And when the example that was just mentioned, when you think about the number of different phones in your house and what have the telcos really done in the past decade to make it easy for, say, a family to manage their multiple phones and say, grow your subscription and your hardware as your kids grow up, right? Or to allow you to contain what amount of data they can use. Very little. Like they really have, from my point of view, dropped the ball there. Tried a couple of things, but really didn't push through. And I think there's really a need for those kind of companies as well to take responsibility to invest and do interesting new things, right? We're in a crisis. Come on, let's get out. Let's do some new cool stuff.
Yep. We had a question here in the front.
Couldn't we bring it a little bit further? The problem is that we are still talking about things, products, and shouldn't we think about processes and how to integrate what we have developed over the last 50 years in processes that really support people? And that's a quite different approach, I would say.
Yeah, processes. Who wants to tackle that one?
Well, you know, in a way, we touched a little bit on it as we were saying. Like, you know, this isn't just about the objects themselves, hardware or software, but it is also about learning as an organization how you think about your customers and produce things for them, right? And so organizational change and process control over both thinking about the future, taking information about your customers and about your business and driving that into an engineering process, because ultimately I think most of us make something, right? Something that does something valuable for other people, whether it is bringing compelling content or enabling powerful tools for them to communicate and produce ideas. But so that process within these companies that make those things is definitely a very important aspect, often of also what our clients get out of our collaboration, right? I've done many projects where the outcome of the program itself, you know, was cool, but definitely not the most important, valuable piece that they got, because the impact on the organization was actually more valuable.
Well, in our business, it's, you know, you were mentioning earlier about the traditional vertical linear TV model, which we've now turned on its side into an infinite on-demand choice. I mean, even now, our Sky Go product has got over 1,000 program elements in there that you can watch movies, episodes, and so on. The challenge that we're all facing in the industry now is the name it's been given is content discovery. And it's all about how do you present choice to the consumer, because that's what is happening. We've kicked open the door for the consumer to a whole world of near infinite choice. How do you present that choice in an orderly manner, or in a manner that the consumer finds manageable? It's a really exciting challenge. We have a long way from nailing it, but it's a very big part of what we do now.
And one example I give within sort of the enterprise or business space is I think that I'm involved in the sort of collaboration communications industry. I think, you know, the future of that industry is that all these applications become embedded within the business applications that people are using every day. So you're in a medical imaging application, all of the present status of the clinicians on that case, their presence is lit up, you click on them, and then you have an immediate case discussion about that patient. Or, you know, you're in a bank branch and then you've got instant access to a mortgage expert so you don't lose that customer. You're in a call center environment and you get instant access to experts across the organization. Just click to chat to them or video them within the application. So there's a lot of work going along with us and many other vendors, you know, Microsoft and what have you, to really try and enable people to have collaboration embedded within their existing business processes and software, so that, you know, some of the clients you see today will not be there anymore. It'll just be embedded within everything else.
We've talked a lot about making things intuitive, on the way of making things easier, but we haven't talked about money and the cost of this. Is it going to cost consumers more to have less complexity?
No, I see it as a competitive opportunity for the marketplace. So I think people, I'll look at Microsoft. So we invest over $10 billion a year in R&D. Our prices aren't going up, right? So it has to do with what's going on in the marketplace, where the opportunities are that you choose to invest, but the market is demanding it. And so companies, big or small, startups or multinationals, really have to address those needs by the customer, because at the end of the day, you guys are driving what we're building. And without you, we don't have a business. So I actually think there's just a lot of opportunity there.
But who's determining the prices? Let's talk about Microsoft for a second. Mm-hmm. Is it really the market determining the price, or economies of scale, demand? What is allowing Microsoft not to increase its prices?
Well, I think Microsoft in general has a lot of different products, so you could drill down on each and every one. But it is understanding what the market is willing to pay. and coming in, and there are costs associated with it, and we have margin just like everybody else that we want to make, and we triangulate that, and then we come up with the right price. And there is testing. I mean, there's testing amongst all of us in terms of understanding what's going to land in the market or not. And as long as we're nimble enough to test, learn, and apply, and adjust based upon the market needs and wants, then that is, for me, that's the name of the game that we need to make sure that we're playing. And it's not limited to Microsoft. I think all of us are in the same situation, that if we outprice ourselves, the market's not going to purchase.
Is that the case for you too, Tim?
Yeah, I think, well, what we're trying to drive is ubiquitous video, as I was trying to get to earlier. And I think, you know, we're expecting around 200 million business users to have video enabled within the enterprise within 3 years, or in fact, that's a Gartner statistic. And I think what that means is that you won't always necessarily have a sort of dedicated room system. It will be pervasive on all PCs, you know, Macs and mobile devices. So video will become really pervasive. And if we don't get the complexity right, or the simplicity, should I say, you know, that won't happen. So it's a matter of it will rise the market as we make these systems easier to use and more intuitive, and then the overall, the whole market will change, and video will become used much more extensively. So I think it's a good thing for the industry.
Okay. All right. Okay.
Well, in our business, it's a cost of doing business. I mean, we have to present what we do in as close to state of the art as we can, because that's what the customer's demanding. And from a competitive point of view, it's just a cost of doing business today. We're way past just putting programming on the air. It's a completely integrated experience, and there is a big cost in making that work reliably and to look good. But it's just a cost of doing business.
I would also say that, you know, talking about an imperative of change, a lot of the revenue models in a lot of businesses currently are going upside down, right? There's a lot of questions about, well, how are people going to pay for some of these capabilities that they're now expecting? And we see people transfer an idea of what should be free to other domains fairly easily. And this is a problem, because ultimately somebody will need to pay, of course, for making valuable services and capabilities and products. So that requires, again, a lot of creativity and a lot of good thinking to think about how you can set things up such that you will actually get that investment back ultimately.
Okay,
it's certainly not going to come cheap.
Yeah, I mean, that's the point, right? It's not going to come cheap. We're running out of time. I want to ask a final question and maybe just get a yes or no answer from all of you. If we were to meet a year from now, would we still be talking about the death of complexity? Or is this a process that is this a process that it will be going on, you know, forever?
Yeah, I think forever.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a journey.
It's a journey.
Yeah.
Right. It's not about the destination, it's about the journey, right? All right. All right. Thank you very much. Let's give these four here a warm round of applause. Thank you very much. Okay. We are going to move on now. We've got a designer coming on the stage. Thank you very much to you four. We appreciate the time with you. 45 minutes flies by. Question now to all of you out there in the audience. How many people have been to the Victoria and Albert Museum in London, the Centre Pompidou in Paris, or the Montreal Museum of Fine Arts? Probably a lot of people have been at least to the Pompidou in Paris. If you've been there, you have seen his sculptured furniture and industrial products.